Story 1.
It was a chilly autumn evening, and I was just about to settle in for a quiet night at home. My parents were out of town for the weekend, leaving me alone in our big old house. Around 8 p.m., I heard a faint knock on the door. I opened it to find a delivery guy holding a small package in his hands. "Delivery for you," he said with an unnervingly cheerful smile. I was puzzled because I hadn't ordered anything, but he insisted it was mine and handed me the box. The package was small and wrapped in plain brown paper. There was no return address, no label, nothing to indicate where it came from. I shrugged it off, assuming it was some sort of mistake or maybe a surprise gift from a friend. I took it inside and placed it on the kitchen table. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to open the box. As I peeled away the layers of paper, I began to feel a strange sense of unease. Inside the box was a small wooden figurine, a creepy-looking doll with its eyes painted in a deep, unsettling shade of black. Its mouth was curved into a sinister smile that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't understand why someone would send me something like this. I picked up the doll, examining it closely, and that's when I noticed a small slip of paper hidden beneath it. With trembling hands, I pulled out the paper and read the message scrawled in red ink. "You're not alone." My heart raced as fear gnawed at my mind. I glanced around the room, feeling like I was being watched. I shook off the unease, convincing myself it was just a prank, albeit a twisted one. I decided to call a friend to calm my nerves. As I dialed my friend's number, the lights in the house flickered. I froze, staring at the doll in my hand, its eyes seemingly glowing in the dim light. Before I could react, I heard a creaking sound, footsteps. They were faint, barely audible, but unmistakably there. Panic surged through me, and I ended the call. I moved cautiously through the house, my heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps seemed to echo all around me, growing louder and more distinct. It was as if someone, or something, was moving through the shadows just out of my line of sight. Terrified, I grabbed a heavy candlestick from a nearby table, ready to defend myself if necessary. The footsteps led me to the basement door, which was slightly ajar. My breath hitched as I considered the possibility that someone had broken in. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open and descended into the darkness. The basement was cold and musty, and I could still hear the footsteps echoing around me. I gripped the candlestick tighter, my knuckles turning white, and slowly moved forward. As I reached the far corner of the basement, I finally caught a glimpse of movement, a shadowy figure standing in the darkness. My heart raced, and I raised the candlestick, ready to confront whatever was there. But as I swung the candlestick through the air, it met nothing but empty space. The figure had vanished, and the footsteps had ceased. I stood there, my breathing heavy, the doll still clutched in my hand. Was it all my imagination? Was I going crazy? I rushed back upstairs, determined to get rid of the doll and put an end to this nightmare. But when I reached the kitchen, the box was gone. The doll was gone. There was no trace of the strange package that had started this terrifying ordeal. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. Was it a prank, a hallucination, or something far more sinister? I moved out of that house soon after, unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched, that I was never truly alone. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I still hear faint footsteps echoing in the darkness, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved.
Story 2.
I had always been close to my mother. She was my confidant, my best friend. So when she passed away unexpectedly, a void was left in my heart that I thought could never be filled. That was until the calls started. It began innocently enough. A faint ring would break the silence of my darkened room at exactly midnight. Groggily, I'd reach for my phone, half expecting a wrong number or a telemarketer. But every time, the caller ID displayed an unknown number. One night, fueled by a mix of curiosity and grief, I answered the call. A voice, faint and distant, greeted me on the other end. It was a voice that sent shivers down my spine, for it sounded just like my mother's. Tears welled in my eyes as the voice spoke my name and whispered words of comfort and love, just as my mother used to do. The calls became a nightly routine. I'd wait anxiously for the clock to strike midnight, eager to hear that familiar voice once again. Each time, the voice seemed stronger, as if it were bridging the gap between this world and the next. And with each call, I found solace in the belief that somehow, my mother was reaching out to me from beyond. However, As the calls continued, they took a strange turn. The voice began to speak of things only my mother and I would know. Childhood memories, inside jokes, secrets shared in the quiet of our home. It was as if the voice was trying to convince me that it truly was my mother on the other end. My nights grew restless as I struggled to reconcile the messages from the voice with the boundaries of reality. Friends and family grew concerned, urging me to seek professional help. But I was convinced that these calls were my lifeline to my mother, and I couldn't let go. One particularly stormy night, as the wind howled and rain battered against my window, the call came as usual. The voice sounded desperate, almost pleading. It spoke of a hidden truth, a secret that had been buried along with my mother, a truth that, if uncovered, could bring closure to both of us. With newfound determination, I began delving into my mother's past. I dug through old photo albums, read her journals, and even interviewed her closest friends. As the pieces came together, I realized that there were gaps in her life story, gaps that seemed to correspond with the voice's revelations. One fateful night, armed with the newfound knowledge, I confronted the voice. I asked questions, seeking clarity about the secrets that had haunted my mother. The voice responded, growing stronger and more urgent. It urged me to face the truth, no matter how painful. In a moment of surreal clarity, I understood. The voice wasn't just a figment of my imagination or a manifestation of grief. It was a bridge to the other side, a connection to my mother's spirit. And as I embraced the truth that the voice revealed, a sense of closure washed over me like a soothing balm. The calls ceased after that night, leaving me with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. I had found the answers I had been seeking, but I had also come to terms with the finality of my mother's passing. The voice had guided me through a journey of healing, reminding me that the bonds of love could transcend even the boundaries between life and death.
Story 3.
It was a stormy night, rain pouring relentlessly as if the sky itself was weeping. I had just started my shift as a food delivery driver, hoping to make some extra cash. My first order came in, a small note accompanying it: delivery to 777 Elm Street. Don't forget the extra sauce. The address gave me a strange feeling, but I brushed it off as mere nerves. As I pulled up to the address, I noticed the house was old and decrepit, its windows shattered and covered with grime. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, casting strange shadows in the dim light. I hesitated for a moment, but the promise of a tip made me decide to go through with it. I walked up to the door, my steps echoing in the stillness of the night. I knocked, and the door creaked open slightly, revealing a dimly lit interior. "Hello," I called out, my voice quivering slightly. No response. The note had instructed me to enter without ringing the doorbell, so I cautiously pushed the door open further. The air inside was heavy with an unsettling silence, broken only by the faint sound of dripping water. I stepped in, my footsteps echoing through the empty hallway. As I walked further, I noticed strange symbols scrawled on the walls in what looked like red paint. A shiver ran down my spine, but I told myself it was just a prank. I followed the dim light, which led me to the kitchen. There, I found an old table with a single chair and a plate of food sitting on it. The smell was overpowering, a mixture of rotten meat and something metallic. The extra sauce mentioned in the note was there, but it was a thick, dark substance that didn't look like any sauce I'd ever seen. Suddenly, a creaking sound echoed from the hallway, causing me to jump. I turned and saw a figure standing there, obscured by the shadows. My heart raced as I strained my eyes to see who it was. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a man with wild eyes and a disheveled appearance. His lips curled into a sinister smile. "You came," he said, his voice a raspy whisper. "I've been waiting for you." Fear gripped me as I realized this wasn't just a normal delivery. Something was very wrong here. I took a step back, my instincts urging me to run, but my legs felt like lead. "I need to go," I stammered, my voice barely audible. The man's smile grew wider, and he started moving towards me, each step deliberate and haunting. "You can't leave now," he hissed, his eyes never leaving mine. "You're here for a reason." Panicking, I turned and bolted for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, and the symbols on the walls seemed to writhe as if alive. Just as I reached the front door, it slammed shut with a loud bang, trapping me inside. I pounded on the door, screaming for help, but the only response was chilling laughter that seemed to come from all directions. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows that danced around me. The man's voice echoed in my ears, whispering words I couldn't understand, but that filled me with a sense of dread. As the laughter grew louder, I felt a presence closing in on me, as if the very walls were squeezing the air out of my lungs. I collapsed to the floor, my vision blurring as darkness enveloped me. And then, everything went silent. When I woke up, I was outside the house, soaked from the rain. The door was wide open, the symbols on the walls now gone. The plate of food and the man were nowhere to be seen. I stumbled to my motorbike, my mind in a haze, and drove away as fast as I could. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. Was it a hallucination? A nightmare? Or did I truly experience something otherworldly in that house? One thing is certain, I'll never forget the haunting sensation of being trapped in a nightmare that felt all too real.
Story 4.
All right, so I gotta tell you about this seriously creepy experience I had on a cruise ship a while back. You know, the kind that gives you goosebumps just thinking about it. Buckle up because this one's a spine tingler. So there I was, on this massive cruise ship, ready for a week of relaxation and fun. The first couple of days were a blast, sunbathing, exploring the ship, and stuffing myself with delicious food. But then, things took a really eerie turn. It was like any other evening, you know. I was out on the deck enjoying the ocean breeze and the stunning sunset. But suddenly, this thick, dense fog started to roll in. I mean, I've seen fog before, but this was something else. It was like it came out of nowhere and swallowed up everything around us. At first, I thought it was kind of cool, you know, like being in one of those mystery movies. But then, as the fog got thicker and thicker, I started feeling this knot in my stomach. The ship's horn started blaring, this low, mournful sound that sent shivers down my spine. And then, things got even weirder. I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me. The fog was so thick that it was like being in a world of white nothingness. And the ship's lights, they seemed to just disappear into the mist. I tried to brush it off, you know, convince myself it was just a natural occurrence. But deep down, I knew something was off. Then out of nowhere, I started hearing these faint whispers, like voices carried by the wind, but they were eerie, unsettling. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but they sounded desperate, almost pleading. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I tried to find my way back inside, but it was like the ship had turned into a labyrinth. The hallways twisted and turned in ways I didn't remember, and every corner seemed to lead to more fog. Panic was setting in big time. And then I saw something, or at least I thought I did, a shadow fleeting just at the edge of my vision. I turned to look, but there was nothing there, just more fog. I felt like I was being watched, hunted even, by something I couldn't see. I don't know how long I stumbled around in that fog, but eventually the ship's horn blared again, louder this time. And suddenly the fog started to thin out, like it was retreating. Within minutes, it was gone, and I was standing on a deck that looked just like it did before. Everyone around me seemed confused, disoriented, like they had experienced something similar. But nobody really talked about it, you know? It was like this unspoken agreement to just move on and forget, but I can't forget. Those whispers, that shadow, they still haunt my dreams. So yeah, that's my bone-chilling cruise ship story. Fog will never be the same for me, that's for sure. And if I ever hear a ship's horn in the distance, you can bet I'll be running the other way.
Story 5.
I've always been fascinated by technology, so when I stumbled upon a new app called Fate Weaver, I couldn't resist downloading it. The app promised to predict future events based on data analysis and user input. At first, it seemed like harmless fun, with predictions ranging from the weather to sports outcomes. But as days turned into weeks, the predictions grew uncannily accurate, especially when it came to my personal life. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I received a notification from Fate Weaver. The message read, "Beware the darkened alley." I glanced at it dismissively, attributing it to some algorithmic coincidence. But as I walked home that night, my curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself hesitating near a dimly lit alley. The sound of footsteps echoed behind me, and a shiver ran down my spine. I quickened my pace, glancing over my shoulder. There in the shadows, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure, its features obscured by darkness. Panic surged through my veins as I rushed home, locking every door and window. The following day, the app's notifications took a more sinister tone. "They know your secrets," it warned. My heart raced as I racked my brain, wondering what secrets the app could possibly be alluding to. I tried to brush it off, chalking it up to a clever marketing gimmick meant to keep users engaged. But as the days passed, the predictions grew eerily specific. The app seemed to have access to information that only I knew, including private conversations and past regrets. Each notification left me feeling exposed and vulnerable, and the fear that someone was watching my every move took hold. One night, as I was preparing for bed, my phone buzzed with a message from Fateweaver. "Set yourself free," it urged. Confusion and fear swirled in my mind. What did the message mean? I stared at my reflection in the mirror, questioning my own sanity. As I looked into the mirror, my reflection began to change. The reflection's expression twisted into a sinister grin, eyes darkening. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. I turned away from the mirror, but when I looked again, my reflection was normal. Doubt gnawed at me as I tried to reason with myself. The app was just code, right? But the predictions continued, each message digging deeper into my psyche. I felt like a puppet in the hands of an unseen puppeteer, the notifications manipulating my emotions. Desperation gripped me. I couldn't escape the app's influence, and its relentless predictions were driving me to the brink of madness. My friends noticed the change in my behavior, my paranoia, and my inability to escape the grip of Fateweaver. I knew I had to break free. With determination, I deleted the app and shut off my phone. For a brief moment, there was silence. But as I gazed at the blank screen, a flicker of light caught my eye. My reflection appeared on the phone's dark surface, and the grin on my reflection's face deepened, mirroring my own growing fear. In that moment, I realized that Fateweaver wasn't just an app. It was an enigmatic force that had ensnared my mind. I had unwittingly unlocked a doorway to my darkest thoughts and fears, and now I was trapped in its insidious game. As the room darkened around me, I knew I had to find a way to escape the suffocating grasp of the app before it consumed me completely.